Hi, I'm Rebecca from engVid, and I have a simple question for you today. What date is this? Look at it and tell me what date it is. Now, you probably said one of these. You might have said April 3rd, 2018, or the 4th of March, 2018. And that's the problem, that not everybody who is watching this video from different parts of the world said the same thing. Can you imagine all of the problems that would ensue, that would follow, if you announce this date for a major event where people from all over the world are going to attend? You could lose your job for this one, and I'm not exaggerating. This is a really serious point to learn in today's lesson, okay? Now let's take it a little bit further. Let's imagine that you're organizing a conference. Let's pretend you're organizing a lecture at a university. Or let's pretend that you're planning a wedding for a friend and you're sending out invitations. Okay? Let's see what happens if you write the date like this. Lots of interesting things, I assure you. All right, so let's see what happened. If you sent out an invitation or an announcement with the date written like this, 04/03/2018, the Americans and Filipinos wrote April 3rd, 2018 in their diaries. In the meantime, the Brits, Germans, Russians, Mexicans, Indians, and a whole lot of others wrote 4th of March, 2018 in their diaries. Already, confusion is on the horizon, right? Lots of expenses, lots of confusion, lots of issues. And the Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, they really weren't sure because you weren't actually following their system at all. So they're flooding your inbox to ask you, which date did you actually mean? And all of this is leading to a lot of unnecessary problems. So I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do when you need to write the date in words, and at other times when you need to write the date in numbers, how to do that and what guidelines you can follow. Now, of course, I'm giving you the general picture. It will also depend a lot on your company, what policies they have regarding how you write the date format, and so on. But I'm going to tell you exactly how to write the date in words and also in numbers when you really have to. Keep watching. Okay, so as I said, when you have a choice, always write the date in words. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can do that in the next segment. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes, for example, if you're filling out a job application online, or a government form, or a visa application, or you're writing the date on a check, sometimes you're going to see little squares where something is written in the background very lightly. It's usually an D or an M or a Y or all of them, okay? So what does that D, M, and Y stand for? The D stands for day, the M stands for month, and the Y stands for year, okay? So that already will help you a whole lot anytime you're filling out any kind of form, all right? Now, these are the different options you might see there, and I'm just trying to show you an example of how you would change the information based on what they are asking you with the D, M, and Y, okay? So let's suppose that you're filling out an application, a visa application, and they ask for your birth date, all right? And let's suppose your birth date is January 3rd, 1986. If the form says day, month, year, then you would write 03/01/86. Now, usually they have two spots available for the day and the month because obviously the December is 12, okay? You can't have more than 2 digits for the day or for the month. So if it just says, if it just has 2, 4, 6 spots there with a D, M, and Y, you're going to write the date like that. Sometimes they switch it around. Then you'll know month, day, year. So in this case, it would become January 3rd, 86. Okay? This is a situation in which the year is only asked for in 2 digits. Okay? Sometimes you see it like this: year, month, day. Then you would write, in this case, 860103. Year, day, month, 860301. Okay? And sometimes you'll see that they ask for the year in 4 digits. Okay? Then it's like this: Y, right? So then it would be 1986, month 03, day 01. Or it could be the same thing with 4 digits for the year and day and month. Okay? So here we've looked at some different options where if you had to write this date, you might be asked any of these ways to write it. And you want to make sure you write it properly so that you don't have a lot of problems afterwards, bureaucratic and otherwise, because you wrote the wrong date. And then they think you're not who you think you are, and all kinds of other problems. Okay? So you really don't want that. Now, one other thing. Sometimes, in some situations, they ask for the month not in 2 letters, okay, or numbers, but as 3. So you might see MMM. What does that mean? How can you write 3? Are you supposed to put another 0? No. When you see 3 M's, that means they're asking for the month, part of it, to be written in letters. So, which letters? How do you abbreviate that? In this case, they're asking you to put the first 3 letters of the month. So Jan, Feb, March, okay? You just put the first 3 letters, okay? If you see that they're asking for the month in 3 spaces, all right? And listen, it's not only for job applications and checks and things like that. You could actually do yourself a lot of harm if you don't understand and you can't interpret these dates properly. Let's look at some other situations. We already talked about how you or many other people might miss a very important event. You could end up eating spoiled food because, printed on food packages is the date, and sometimes, unfortunately, it's written like this. You could end up buying products which have expired, or you could even end up using old medicines. All of that is really dangerous. You can also make mistakes in legal contracts and all kinds of other complicated situations, okay? So as I've said, whenever possible, you should write the date in words, and that's what we're going to look at next. All right, so the great date debate continues. Now you're saying, you mean to tell me for something as important as this, there is no standardization in the world? No, there really isn't. Of course, there are organizations that have tried to standardize this. A very well-known organization is the International Organization for Standards, also known as ISO, right? They said it is more logical to write the date in this way, to write the year, the month, and then the day. You start from the biggest number, go down to the month, go down to the day, right? But unfortunately, that system is not followed all over the world, okay? It may be followed in some countries. For example, we said in China, Korea, and Japan, they actually do follow the ISO 8601 system, which says you must write it as year, month, day. So let's say that August 1st, 2018 would be written this way in these countries, and any other countries that actually decide to follow this ISO 8601 system. It can not only be countries, it could also be some companies. So always be aware and find out what your company suggests and what they insist on in terms of the date format. Okay, you want to ask them about, use that term, the date format. All right, now, so even though, yeah, it's good if everybody followed that system, it would make sense, or one system, there are 2 other main systems, the American and the British, okay? So just to review, the Americans put the month first, then the day, then the year. Whether the year is written in 4 digits or 2, doesn't matter. The British, day, month, year, okay? So August, this would be August 1st, 2018, if you're writing it in numbers. But as I said, if you can avoid it at all, do not write it in numbers. Only write it in numbers if a form asks you for it. okay? Or if your company insists on it. All right. Rather than that, write it in words. Now, usually in the States, we write it like this: August 1st, comma, 2018. And why do we put the comma? Because otherwise all these numbers can get mixed up, right? So the comma is to separate the date from the year, all right? You could also write it this way: August 1st with the ST for first, right? Again, you need the comma, 2018. And this, as I said, is followed in a few countries like the USA, the Philippines, usually in Canada also. We follow this system, okay? There are some of our government forms which might ask for specific other formats, but then they would say, you know, D, M, Y, and so on. All right. If you're in Britain, or if you're following the British system, which is followed in lots of countries and lots of areas of the world, then you would go with day, month, year, for example. So here it would be the 1st of August, 2018. They also write it in words slightly differently from the States, okay? So they follow the same system. So they say the 1st of August, 2018. Now, when you write the date like this, you don't need to put the comma because there's no confusion, right? There's a date here, there's a word, then there's a date. So there's no confusion, unlike here. And if you want, you can also write the ST, the 1st of August, 2018. All right? Now, whether you write it this way or this way, it will be very clear to anybody who's reading it anywhere in the world what that date is, right? So as I've said, whenever possible, write it in words. These are some of the parts of the world that actually follow this system: the UK, many countries in Europe, many countries in Latin America, Australia, Russia, India, and so on. It would be very interesting if you like, in fact, in the comments section of this video, to write your country and then put down how you write the date in your country, which date format is followed. If you're not sure, just check your computer. Usually computers have the date according to the system that's followed in that country. All right? So I hope this lesson helped you a lot to clarify this issue, or even to bring this issue to your attention, because maybe you weren't even aware of this difference. And I'm sure you understand now that it can make such a difference, especially at work. It can save your job, it can save your health, it can save your time, and it can save a lot of money. And if you, God forbid, were to have ever used any medicines that were outdated, it could even save your life. So I hope this lesson helped you. If you found this lesson helpful, please check out some of my other lessons on YouTube or on engVid. And after that, please go to our website at www.engvid.com to do a quiz on this so you can really master it once and for all. Okay? Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your patience. You will be rewarded. Bye for now.